Okay, now that Avengers Endgame has arrived, breaking nearly every box office record in the process, there's one big question on everyone's minds. What does the future have in store for the Marvel Cinematic Universe? More specifically, what does it hold in store for certain characters? Black Widow in particular is a big question mark. A solo movie starring Scarlett Johansson has been announced, but what exactly is it going to be about? Without spoiling anything, let's just say her character goes on an interesting journey in Endgame. So, what does it mean for her future? Turns out there are plenty of great options for a Black Widow solo movie, and even though it probably goes without saying, we're going to say it anyway. This video contains major spoilers for Endgame. If you haven't seen the film and don't want to get it spoiled, turn back now. If you have seen the film, you're good to go. So, let's get to it. Still with us? Okay, great. Now that all those lame kids who haven't seen Endgame are out of the room, let's get to it. And hey, if you haven't seen Endgame yet, we're just kidding about the lame thing, but seriously, you'll probably want to get on that. Few fans doubted Endgame would be anything less than an epic and emotional event, full of twists and turns and all manner of excitement. We all knew epic battles and well-earned payoffs were a given, but with all of that extraordinary crowd-pleasing, you've also got to deal with the inevitable heartbreak. I know. Look, I like it about as much as you do. I don't want to have to say goodbye to these characters, but that's the price we pay with these epic finales. And look, even though there's no chance whatsoever that the Marvel Cinematic Universe will ever come to an end, it's nice that Endgame gives this first batch of movies a sense of closure. It's a fitting end, quote-unquote, to the 22-film saga. And most important, it's a fulfilling end. How often does that happen? With a good chunk of our heroes wiped out by Thanos' Infinity Gauntleted finger snap, Endgame gives much appreciated focus to our OG Avenging Squad. It's a smart move that allows for smaller moments with the characters we've come to know and love over the past decade. Sadly, no fulfilling end is without its fair share of emotion. There were a number of casualties across Infinity War and Endgame. Vision, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers. Well, technically Rogers wasn't really a casualty per se, but you know what we mean. He's old. He's not going back into battle anytime soon. Let him have his nap. He's earned it after all he's been through. And of course, we had to say farewell to Natasha Romanov, a.k.a. Black Widow. A moment of silence in her memory. Is there any way that we can get the sad Hulk music from the TV show in here? Look, I know it doesn't make sense, but it feels right. What's that? We don't have the licensing rights? Oh, okay then. Moving on, Black Widow spent a lot of Infinity War on the sidelines, hanging out with good old Captain Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson while they perfected their smoldering, strong, and silent vibes. At the very least, she got to take out one of the children of Thanos and do some general booty kicking. But in Endgame, she gets her big moment in the spotlight. It's just a shame it also had to result in her biting the dust too. Just to recap real quick, during their attempt to obtain the Soul Stone from the past, Black Widow and Hawkeye realize one of them is going to have to sacrifice themselves. Hawkeye insists on taking the hit. He's got nothing left to live for, he reasons, and he's become nothing more than a monster. Sure, he's a super cool monster with an awesome sword and a new look, but he's still a monster. Anyway, Black Widow refuses to let her best bud sacrifice himself. She reasons he has too much to live for. Plus, she wants to give him a chance for redemption, the same way he did for her way back when. It's a beautiful moment that not only puts emphasis on their relationship, but shows just how far she's come as a character. Starting out, Black Widow was more interested in survival. She'd rather make it on her own terms than function as a team member. But now, after so many years on her own, she finally found her family, something she was willing to die for. But now that Black Widow is out of commission, or is she, we've got lots of questions. We're talking about that upcoming Phase 4 solo movie. What is it going to be about? What kind of story will they be focusing on? Will it be a prequel? A sequel? Let's take a deep dive into Black Widow's comic book roots and see if we can figure out where to go from here. The character of Black Widow first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 52 all the way back in 1964. The story focused on her attempts to assassinate both Tony Stark and a reformed Professor Anton Vanko, also known as Crimson Dynamo. Tony ends up developing something of a crush on Natasha. Hey, that ended up in Iron Man 2. They end up going out on a date, which is rudely interrupted by Black Widow's partner Boris's attempts to steal the Crimson Dynamo armor. Of course, this means Iron Man has to rush in to save the day. Black Widow distracts Iron Man so Boris can zap him. In the midst of all this chaos, she manages to escape and ends up wandering on her own, alone and afraid. She's always been something of a loner, so this is a fitting start for the character. But just a few issues later, she ends up meeting Hawkeye and recruits him to her hip and happening super spy cause. They take on Iron Man together and, no big surprise, she ends up falling in love with Hawkeye. Because you can't team up to take on a guy in a fancy metal suit without falling in love with your partner in crime. In fact, it's her love for Hawkeye that ends up driving her decision to defect from Russia. Naturally, when the KGB caught wind of her defection, they were none too thrilled about it. They ended up gunning her down, which put her in the hospital. In case you didn't know, this is the event that inspires Hawkeye to seek out the Avengers and join up with them. Of course, Black Widow ends up recovering and finally manages to defect to the United States. She becomes an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, after functioning as a recurring member for years, officially becomes an Avenger. Okay, let's take a brief breather for a moment and look at what we've got here. Already, there is plenty of material for a Black Widow solo outing. Heck, we might even have a couple of films here. And you know how much Marvel Studios likes to make their monies, so you know they'll jump at the opportunity to make more than just one of these. First and foremost, we have the potential for a Black Widow movie that focuses exclusively on Natasha's upbringing and training. Her past has always been teased at, but we don't know all that much about what made her into the Black Widow we all know and love. Showcasing this story would give audiences the opportunity to learn more about the mysterious Red Room that we caught a snippet of in Age of Ultron. Additionally, we'd sneak a peek at the lonely journey that brought her to S.H.I.E.L.D. and eventually the Avengers. This seems like a likely route. After all, we've got Kate Shortland attached to the project as director. For those of you not in the know, Shortland's second feature, Lore, followed the story of a young girl in Germany during World War II. It focuses on her realization that her parents' generation was involved in one of the darkest chapters of Germany's history. Telling a story about a girl coming of age in such a disturbing environment seems like fitting prep for a Black Widow project. But beyond a Black Widow origin story, we've also got a potential Hawkeye origin story too. The opportunity to learn about Black Widow's past will inevitably result in the two crossing paths. Maybe it's a bit too much to include both of their origins in one movie. Or then again, maybe not. After all, didn't Civil War introduce Black Panther and Spider-Man? It can be done. Alright, how about this? Marvel can just offer a little teaser of Hawkeye and Black Widow's relationship in this first film. For this initial outing, just focus on her origin exclusively and give her the opportunity to shine on her own. Then you can hit us with this awesome team-up movie that shows how she and Hawkeye became besties. Plus, we can see the story of how Hawkeye saved her life, a debt she finally repaid in Endgame. But rumor has it that Black Widow's first solo outing might take place in a more recent time frame. In fact, that hashtag show suggested it would focus on the period right before the character's first appearance in Iron Man 2. This makes more sense as Scarlett Johansson has reportedly signed on to star in the film. So if we're not going the origin story route, what are some solid standalone stories we should be looking at? Well, who says we have to abandon the origin story entirely? Why not take a page from Richard K. Morgan's 2004 Black Widow run Homecoming and combine the best of both worlds? Morgan's story focuses on the character's attempts to escape the spy life. It combines a retelling of Natasha's origins with a modern tale that emphasizes what makes her so awesome. Or how about Nathan Edmondson and Phil Noto's 2014 story arc, The Finely Woven Thread? That's as good a place to start as any. The interesting thing about this one is it gives Black Widow a real chance to shine without relying on her avenging teammates. The events of The Finely Woven Thread focus on Black Widow's attempts to atone for her past and all the horror she unleashed as a KGB agent. This could easily take place in a post-Winter Soldier era. It would offer her the perfect opportunity to explore her roots and find herself while fitting in with the MCU's overarching narrative. Another fantastic Black Widow arc is Mark Waid and Chris Samnee's recent run from 2016. This could also fall right into the post-Winter Soldier world. It kicks off with S.H.I.E.L.D. making Black Widow their #1 target and her harrowing escape from a helicarrier. Not a bad action sequence to set the stage, right? Hey, wait a second. Didn't Mark Waid and Chris Samnee collaborate on a recent Daredevil run? So while we're dreaming of the perfect Black Widow solo outing, let's also go ahead and point out that she and Matt Murdock had a relationship in the comics. What a perfect excuse to introduce Daredevil to the Marvel Cinematic Universe! And hey, while you're at it, Disney, why don't you just go ahead and uncancel Daredevil? Come on, you know you want to. And maybe, just maybe, Marvel Studios might totally retcon Black Widow's death in Endgame. I'm not saying they should, nor do I think it's a good idea, but any comic book fan knows that in this universe, the dead only stay dead for a limited amount of time. We're hoping Marvel Studios commits to this choice though. As much as we might miss Black Widow, bringing her back from the dead will only end up robbing her death of any meaning. That being said, we have to point something out that may suggest Black Widow's return. Steve Rogers returned all the Infinity Stones to the specific points in time they were taken, right? So what happens when you trade back a Soul Stone? Does it return the lost soul to you? Just saying. But look, the Black Widow prequel route seems to be the best bet and offers plenty of great stories without retconning anything major. Regardless of what direction Marvel Studios ultimately decides to go in, it's clear that there are plenty of options on the table. Based on what we've learned here, it seems like Black Widow has a bright future in the MCU, despite the whole being dead thing. And while her bitter demise might still sting, fans can take solace knowing that there are plenty of adventures left for Natasha Romanov. So how about it? Are you excited for a Black Widow solo outing? Which story arc from the comics do you hope gets adapted for the big screen? And what for you is the key to making a great Black Widow movie? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our great content. Until next time, true believers.